Hello, my dear menopausal friends. I'm so glad you came back for more information on menopause. I just love knowing that you're getting the education you deserve. So now we're looking at the 3 big diseases that are due to estrogen deficiency as a group. And these HRT related videos began with video 286. This is video number 290, and it's the 10th video in the entire unit and the 5th video pertaining just to HRT. In video 288, I talked about the estrogen dosage requirements for preventing the 3 diseases: heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's. And last week in video 289, I talked about compounded estrogen and told you why it is not reliable for purposes of preventing these diseases. Well, one of the most common questions I get from women wanting to know if they're taking enough estrogen is, what should my hormone levels be? So today we're going to address the use of lab testing to determine your level of estrogen as it pertains to preventing these 3 big diseases. There is a huge focus on hormone levels with regard to HRT dosage. I guess you could say that there are a lot of lab lovers out there. So for all of you who wonder about that, this video is for you. And watching this video could make the difference between preventing symptoms and diseases versus succumbing to symptoms and diseases. Today I'm going to be telling you some of the behind-the-scenes dirt that will prevent you from falling prey to people who prey on menopausal women. This is not a standalone topic in my book, regardless of whether you have the 1st edition or the 2nd edition. So, no matter what, watch this video. Okay, you know me, I don't just launch into the topic, tell you my opinion, and scare you into doing things a certain way. If I did that, this education would be your menopause my way instead of your menopause your way. My goal is to enable you to manage your menopause your way. And the only way to do that is to start at the beginning and make everything completely logical. So that's how I'll approach this discussion today. So let's start with some definitions. Ages ago, in the very early tutorials of this education, you learned that you transition from your pre-menopausal life to your post-menopausal life over a few years. Pre-menopause is when you have high levels of all 3 sex hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. That's this part of the timeline. So here you have estrogen in pink, progesterone in a multicolored Play-Doh, and testosterone in blue. And as you see, they are all very high, high, high. The first transition is when you go from premenopause to perimenopause. And perimenopause is when your progesterone drops. Notice that here's your estrogen and it's still high. Notice that here's your testosterone and it's still fairly high. But look at the progesterone. It has plummeted. This is called perimenopause. And when I say that your progesterone drops, I mean it drops. It drops to 0. It may take a few years for that to happen, but it happens. And there may be a lot of seesawing all along the way, with your progesterone being high and then low and over again like that. But eventually you lose it all. You completely bottom out. So the ultimate definition of perimenopause is a progesterone of 0. Next comes the transition from perimenopause to postmenopause. And postmenopause is when your estrogen drops. See? Now, like progesterone, it may sputter for a while, going up and down and up and down. But just like a car running out of gas, it's nearing empty. And eventually, it drops to zero. Kaput, gone, no more. About 2 years after postmenopause, your testosterone can drop some more. Okay? And it too goes to nearly zero. So what this means is that by definition, postmenopause is characterized by hormone levels of 0 for all 3 of your reproductive hormones. It's always baffling to me when women talk about spontaneously balancing their hormones during postmenopause. You can't balance hormones that are 0. 0 means they're absent. How can you balance something that isn't there in the first place? Or, I guess you could say they're already balanced because they're all 0. Either way, 0 is 0. But the key is to understand that the normal value for your hormones at postmenopause is 0. And yet, women are constantly going to labs to get their hormones tested. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, if the normal level of all 3 hormones is basically 0, what difference does the lab make? It's not as though there is some normal range for hormones that are all 0. But apparently lab lovers wish there were. Now, let's contrast this with hormone levels for your thyroid hormones. As you know, you don't automatically run out of thyroid hormone the way you automatically run out of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. You don't outlive your thyroid gland the way you outlive your ovaries. So no matter what your age, there are still normal ranges for all of your thyroid hormones. And anytime your lab values fall outside that normal range, it indicates a thyroid problem. If so, you treat the thyroid problem by replacing thyroid hormones so that you stay within the normal range. And all labs can easily calibrate their assays so that this normal range for your thyroid labs is consistent from lab to lab and country to country. There's no question what a normal thyroid lab entails. There's nothing arbitrary or uncertain about it. So when it comes to managing your thyroid, you always use lab values as a guide. This is not the case for estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone during postmenopause. Why? Because there is no such thing as a normal range. They're all supposed to be 0. You can't know the normal range of hormones that are really supposed to be 0. Who gets to decide what the normal range is? So why is anyone falling prey to people who prey on menopausal women by telling them that they have to rely on hormone levels? If the normal level is 0, who gets to decide what the desirable lab value should be? How does anyone say what level is desirable for postmenopausal women? Women are not robots. Hormone levels of 0 cannot arbitrarily be decided by a lab, a doctor, or you. There is no such thing as a normal hormone level in postmenopause when the normal level is 0. But your own body does tell you what's right for you. Your body talks to you. The problem is that humans are the only animals on earth who refuse to listen to their bodies. Instead, they listen to Dr. Google, Suzanne Summers, advertisers, marketers, ignorant girlfriends, and labs. And if you'll just listen to your own body instead of listening to all these unreliable sources, you'll be a whole lot better off. So when it comes to your estrogen level, there are two things to consider. First is the minimal necessary dosage for preventing heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's. If your goal is to prevent those diseases with your HRT, then you must take at least the minimal necessary dosage. And if you want to be sure you're accomplishing your goal of preventing the diseases, you get specific evaluations to verify that. For your heart, you can get a cardiac workup. For your bones, you can get a DEXA scan. For your brain, you just have to assess how well your brain works. There are no specific studies for it. I'll talk about all of that in more detail next week. But that's not all. There's all the symptoms of estrogen deficiency too. Here's a list of the symptoms that are due primarily or entirely to estrogen deficiency. Anxiety, hot flashes, night sweats, heart palpitations, insomnia, fatigue, forgetfulness, mood swings, irritability, depression, joint pain and stiffness, dry skin, hair loss, vaginal dryness, urinary tract infections, urinary incontinence, weight gain, and decreased sex drive. This is where listening to your own body comes in. If you are taking the minimal necessary dosage for preventing the three big diseases, but you still have symptoms of estrogen deficiency, that is your own body telling you loudly and clearly that it isn't enough for you. If so, you need to take a dosage that is higher than the minimal necessary dosage for the diseases. By approaching it this way, you let your own body be your guide. And there is no better guide than your own body. The only opinion that matters with regard to anything about your menopause is your body's. Of course, since you're mama bear, and since estrogen is mama bear's hormone, estrogen is really all that matters. Progesterone just protects your uterus from uterine cancer. And your dosage of progesterone has to accommodate your dosage of estrogen. Testosterone is entirely optional. It is entirely unnecessary for most women. So all that matters is that you have enough estrogen. And beyond that, everything else is secondary. Another thing to recognize is the fact that any lab value at any time is merely a snapshot in time. It reflects the state of affairs only at the moment it was drawn. It does not tell you anything about how the lab value varies over time. But you're not a robot. You evolve. You transition from one phase to another, and along the way, your life is affected by many things other than the absolute hormone level itself. So your overall quality of life cannot be represented by the value of a hormone level from a lab test. Prioritizing the lab test over what your own body is telling you is just plain backward. So let's apply this to the professional you use to manage your menopause. You see, I hear all sorts of things. Sometimes women want hormone testing, and the professional says it's unnecessary. In that case, the woman is the lab lover. Other times, the professional insists on hormone testing, even though the woman feels it's unnecessary. And in that case, the professional is the lab lover. And sometimes they both want hormone testing and then grapple with results. So they're both lab lovers. I always caution women on using any professional who uses hormone values for determining your dosages of estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone. First of all, this is an immediate indication that the professional knows nothing about menopause. It's just such a basic concept that hormone levels won't help you for hormones with a normal level of 0. But beyond that, any professional who uses hormone levels is doing what's best for them instead of what's best for you. Today illustrate this, let me give you two scenarios. The first scenario is what would happen with a professional who does not use hormone levels. And the second is what would happen with one who does. In scenario one, you're taking HRT. And you tell your doctor that you are still having symptoms of estrogen deficiency on your current dosage of estrogen. You tell the doctor that you still have hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, and irritability. Your doctor listens to you and says, well, those are all symptoms of estrogen deficiency. That means you don't have enough estrogen, and he or she increases your dosage of estrogen. In scenario two, you're taking HRT. And you tell your doctor that you're still having symptoms of estrogen deficiency on your current dosage of estrogen. You tell the doctor that you still have hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, and irritability. And your doctor, who requires you to get labs for hormone levels, looks down at your lab and says, but your labs are normal. Your estrogen level is right where I want it to be. Did you hear that? Your estrogen is right where he or she wants it to be. Not where your own body wants it to be. Not where you want it to be, but where he or she wants it to be. The first scenario constituted doing what's best for you. The second constituted doing what's best for your doctor. And because any lab value for a hormone is but a single snapshot in time, if you're still transitioning, that lab value could be different every hour of every day for years. If your hormones are on a roller coaster, your life will be too. And if your doctor relies on a lab value that is a single snapshot in time, you will be miserable for years. Using lab tests for reproductive hormone levels when you're no longer reproductive constitutes treating the lab instead of treating you. You'll be a lot better off just listening to your own body and doing what it's telling you to do without a faulty lab telling you what to do. Now, depending on the kind of professional you use to manage your menopause, there are 3 different sources for hormone testing. Some are worse than others, but not a single one of them is reliable. The 3 sources for determining the level of your reproductive hormones are blood, saliva, and dried urine. If you use a medical doctor, the most likely source will be your blood. Of the 3, it's the most accurate, but still only a snapshot, and it's still supposed to be 0. If you use an alternative or complementary professional like an osteopath or naturopath, they're likely to use saliva. It's much less accurate and still only a snapshot and still supposed to be 0. If you use an integrative or functional medicine doctor, they're most likely to use dried urine. It's completely inaccurate, still only a snapshot, and still supposed to be 0. The bottom line is that there is no valid test for hormones that are on a roller coaster until they plummet to 0. It's completely bogus for you to rely on such testing. Inevitably, women who are lab lovers and women who use a professional who is a lab lover have had all these hormone levels drawn, but they face a huge dilemma. They feel horrible with a long list of menopausal symptoms, but the labs indicate a so-called high estrogen level or low testosterone level. And because they are so worried about the lab result, they adjust their HRT to accommodate the lab result, which just makes them more miserable. Never do they consider the possibility that the lab isn't as representative of their reality as their symptoms are. So they keep adhering to what the labs dictate while continuing to have a miserable quality of life. It's a vicious cycle for most of them. But it's big money for the professionals who make you do them. These hormone tests are a huge scam these days. I am shocked at the reams of results women send me for consultations. If only they'd come to me before being scammed by professionals who prey on menopausal women, I would have saved them a lot of money. The two most commonly used labs of lab lovers, both professional and laypersons, are the Dutch test and the Eve test. Look at these. That's one of them. Here's the other. That's one set of lab tests. They have a bunch of pictures, drawings, references, and explanation. And none of it means anything. Women fall prey to these big lab panels very easily. They cost a fortune. One of them costs about $400, but insurance doesn't cover it because it's considered investigative. In other words, bogus. And the other one costs a minimum of $250, but they tell you nothing. The most common professionals using these ridiculous lab panels are those who are pellet pushers, in addition to being lab lovers. They are making the most money of all the so-called hormone specialists. Most of these professionals are really not hormone specialists at all. Most are not menopause specialists, and most are not gynecologists. In fact, most know absolutely nothing about menopause, but they know about money. And by requiring you to pay big money to get labs before you pay big money to have pellets put in your body, you become prey, prey, prey. And the pellets don't work because they are entirely unregulated compounded products. So steer clear of lab lovers and pellet pushers. Listen to your body and save your money. The bottom line is that your reproductive hormones plummet to zero at postmenopause. So there's no such thing as a normal level other than zero. Trying to adhere to a lab value that is non-existent will sabotage you. Okie dokie. Next week, we'll look at how to monitor for prevention of the three big diseases, because as you saw today, I mostly addressed monitoring based on your symptoms today. And you might be thinking, what if I don't have any symptoms? How can I be sure I'm preventing the three big diseases if I feel fine? I invite you to subscribe right here by clicking subscribe. I invite you to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I invite you to schedule a consultation with me at menopausetailor.me. I will help you avoid the scammers and pushers who prey on postmenopausal women. See you next week. Bye.